When we engage in apologetics as Christians, we ought not pretend neutrality. He is our foundation. He is the rock. When Jesus Christ would confront the world, he never confronted the world and gave a statement or made a claim and then asked for some other corroboration of his claims. He didn't ask for somebody's stamp of approval. He didn't appeal to somebody else's authority other than his own and the Father's. Jesus comes into the world as ultimate authority with a self-attesting authority. And let me say this to you, listen. When somebody approaches a question, we all have to, it is by necessary consequence as creatures, we all have to depend on something as the final resting place, as the ultimate authority, as the self-attesting authority. And as Christians, that for us is... Okay, Australians, come on now, you're worrying me, okay? That for us is God. It's his word. You can say Jesus. By the way, if asked a question in church, Jesus is usually a great answer, right? Okay, it's usually always true. So when we think about apologetics, setting Christ apart as Lord as our first commitment, we need to think about foundations. Listen, you need to know something about the myth of neutrality. If you haven't heard that before, I want you to memorize it. You grab hold of that, and you grab hold of it because the Bible teaches it, you will recognize as you face anybody, whether it's the atheist, whether it's the agnostic, whether it's the skeptic, whether it's the Mormon or the Jehovah's Witness, you recognize the myth of neutrality now, and those conflicts are much easier, and you can understand what's actually happening. The myth of neutrality. Listen, nobody is neutral. The unbeliever that you're talking to is not neutral, no matter how much they pretend they are. And believer, you're not neutral, and Jesus commands you not to be. So we have to first get over is recognizing that the unbeliever's problem isn't that there's not enough light for God's existence, not enough evidence for God's existence. The problem for the unbeliever is fundamental. It is lower than anything happening on the peripheral. The problem for the unbeliever is spiritual. The problem is sin. What did Jesus say? Whoever commits sin is a slave of sin. But the message of Jesus is, if the Son sets you free, you shall be free indeed. The myth of neutrality. The unbeliever is not neutral. They have a particular perspective of the world, whether they've thought through it or not. They have a worldview, and so do we. They're not neutral, and you're not supposed to be. We need to think about our foundations and go about it the way that Jesus did. Think in terms of Jesus' authority and the way that he speaks. His self-attesting authority. He's the reference point.